So, we're working on this series that we've called Life Traps, and it kind of gets us into conversations about kind of where we came from. And what we're talking about with these life traps really could come from a couple different places. Number one, obviously our upbringing, our family of origin, the way we grew up, the people we grew up with, the stuff that happened to them, and the stuff that happened to us. Other side would be a life trauma that occurred somewhere in our life. Could be a significant death, the loss of somebody, an event where things got really discombobulated, turned upside down, and we were affected in deep, deep ways. So these could come from either one of those places. And tonight, we're going to be working on another piece of this. And the questions I have for tonight that, may be affecting you, depending on whether this is really your place in this conversation or not. And there's like 5 of these areas. We're going to do 5 weeks. This is week 3. If we haven't gotten to yours yet, you just hang on a couple more weeks. I think you will. I think we'll get there, amen? But here's some questions for tonight. Do I struggle in my life respecting the rights of other people? Do I struggle respecting the rights of other people? Is it hard for me to see kind of like where they really are, they really get to say that, they really get to do that, they really get to think that, they really get to feel that way, they really get to experience that, and I've got to learn how to respect who they are and what they want to do, that sort of a deal. Number 2, do I struggle in my life setting realistic goals? Do I struggle in my life setting realistic goals? A bunch of people graduated from UT yesterday, right? There are a bunch of kids that despite what everybody's been trying to say to them somewhere along the way, they think right now tonight that they're going to apply for a job tomorrow, and someone, because they have a college degree, is going to pay them $50,000 to go out and do that job. And they're going to get that job right away because they just graduated from college. And they're a hot shot, and it's going to work out perfect, and there should be no problem whatsoever. And if you're the mom or the dad of the graduate, you're hoping to God that's right, amen? Because maybe they could pay you back a little bit, and that'd be good. None of that's probably going to happen. That expectation is probably not going to happen. Do I struggle with realistic goals? Number 3, do I frequently feel like I am a victim in life? Do I feel like I'm being treated unfairly? Do I feel like things don't go right for me? I'm always on the short end of the stick. I always get shortchanged. If I've got a family of siblings, if I've got a lot of siblings, I never feel like I end up being the what? Favorite, right? I always feel like I'm not the favorite. Like in our house, whoever is there, you're the favorite for them. And they're probably not smart enough to realize they're really not all the favorite at the same time, but I don't really care. If it works for them, works for me. Amen? Amen. Daddy, am I the favorite? Oh, yes, baby, you're the favorite. Until you're not there. Then the next kid's the favorite. So what? But in my family, I think I told you, my mom, 5-foot little German, nobody, I never heard of anybody being the favorite. That word never came up. Her thing was, there's 6 of you. If there would be 4 of you, that would really be okay. We're good with that. It always lets you put you a little bit, anxiety in the room. You look around, you go, whoa, she's good with there just being 4 of us. And you think about that, but she didn't mean it, but I liked it. It was good. I thought that was good parenting. It'll avoid what we're talking about tonight. Some more stuff goes with this, what we're talking about tonight. Was my family, for a million different reasons, maybe it was an absent parent, single parent situation, could have been a million things. Could have been an alcoholic or addictive situation, could have been a lot. Was my family, when I look back on my family, was my family permissive? Was my family permissive? Was discipline in my family generally avoided because, we just don't really want to talk about that? Was discipline generally avoided? Was supervision or guidance missing? Did I feel like when I was growing up, did I feel like I was pretty much on my own a lot of the time. Amen? If you listen to people, if you go to AA speaker meetings, you go to NA meetings, even if you go to a lot of Al-Anon meetings that are speaker meetings, you're going to hear this theme, aren't you? I felt like I was alone a lot. I feel like nobody was paying attention to me. Nobody really cared what I did, right? Nobody really thought about what was going on with me. I never felt like anybody ever said, hey, this is the right way to do this. This is not the right way to do this. All that. Was supervision or guidance missing? And last, was I generally protected from discomfort? Was there always people around me that were basically telling me, it's all right, don't worry about it, what can I do, it's really okay, here's what you do, here's how you get out of it, here's how I take care of it? Was there somebody always finding a way to make sure that I was never uncomfortable? Never uncomfortable. I think I've told this story a couple times before, but that takes me to this deal with my dad. I decided when I was 16 that since I had a job and needed to go to school, I was playing sports and all that it made sense, I needed a car. And I go to my siblings and they go, well, Mark, did you not think that we went to Dad and Mom and asked them for a car? I'm like, I don't know what you did. It's your problem, man. I know that, I got more stuff to do. I think I got to get a car. They're going to give me a car. And they go for it. And I tell you, I was positive that somehow that was going to work out. I go and explain all this stuff to my dad. I'm like, well, Dad, this is why, I got this job, I got sports, I got all this stuff, I got to get back and forth from school, blah, 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 blah. And I really think I need to get a car. My dad goes, man, you know what, Mark? You do need a car. I'm like, look at those suckers. I do those two, my older brother and sister, I knew they were messed up. Look at them, man, they just don't know how to do it. My dad goes, we want you to have a car, your mother and I. We want you to know, he says, this made me feel so much better. He goes, we want you to know that your mother and I have plenty of money. We have plenty of money to buy you a car. I'm like, and there you go. There you go. He goes, I also want you to know, Mark, that since your mother and I have plenty of money to buy you a car, and we think you ought to have a car, we're not going to get you a car. I'm like, oh yeah, I see how this works out. He goes, yeah, if you want to buy a car, you're going to have to pay for a car. You're going to have to save the money, buy a car, do this, do that. You got to take care of all this. This is what's all involved. But I want you to have a car. It did not work out the way I thought. It just did not work out the way I thought. When we used to get into it, mostly this was in the summertime when we were out of school, there was all kind of opportunity to create havoc. And that is the way you say it. Some of you are going to go, no, you say it, havoc. No, you say the word havoc. I don't know why you do. I like it that way. But you get into this stuff, and the thing was, it was 1 mile from our house to the corner where my dad would turn in when he came home from work. And so, if you knew you were going to get just hammered, what you would do is try to head him off at the pass. And you would go up to the corner and you would stand around like a loving little kid and you would wait for him to come and you would be like, you would open the door and you would go, hey, Daddy, and you would get in the car. Sometimes, depending on how it was going to go down for you, sometimes you could get in the car, plead your case, but you learned after a while it really didn't matter how hard you pleaded your case because there were going to be consequences. I knew that there was going to be a line that you stepped over. And you would get to our house, and he would tell you exactly what my mom had already told us 3 hours earlier. It took me a lot of years, to realize that every single time that's the way it happened. Whatever they agreed to was already done before I ever got to the corner. But sometimes it was so bad, you would go up there, take the walk of shame up to the corner. That's what we called it, the walk of shame. You would take the walk of shame up to the corner. You would open up the door and go, hey, Daddy. And he would go, get out of my car. Shut the door. And you would just take the walk of shame all the way back. There was some time to do, as he would say, some thinking. But what happens when you're in a situation where you grew up and there's nothing like that going on, where no one's showing you, man, this is the deal, this is not the deal, this is the deal, this is not the deal? And as much as you think you would be loving that experience as a kid, am I right? It's like, this is like being on vacation every day. It does not help us to acclimate into life as it is. And we struggle with everything I'm talking about, how to set goals, how other people are involved, what are other people going to do with what I'm doing, how's this going to relate, what's going to happen over here, if this happens, what does happen over here, how does A follow B follow C in my life? Because I believe without all that, without any kind of structure like that, what do I believe a lot of time? I believe that I am a freaking island, amen? And that really I live in that stage of being the age of 2. At the age of 2, what do I believe? If you're a teacher, I believe that the world revolves around me. You know, well, that's okay when I'm 2, but when I'm 27, that's a problem. Part of the pieces that come out of this, one of the pieces that come out of this conversation tonight with this dilemma is that I end up having this deep feeling that the world that I'm living in owes me something. That the world that I'm living in maybe owes me everything. You know, and so I not only treat work that way, but I treat life that way. I treat relationships that way. There's a marriage class that we teach here once in a while called iMarriage. And one of the shockers of iMarriage is that when you get married, what is it that your husband owes you? And the right answer to this is not the nice answer. The right answer to this is, what does your husband owe you when you get married? Nothing. What does your wife owe you when you get married? Nothing. But see, when I live out of that sense of no boundaries, I believe that I'm entitled to basically the world taking care of me. And when the world doesn't take care of me, I resent it. And for a lot of us in this room, this is a deal, isn't it? That I don't understand why things don't work out the way they're supposed to. And when they don't work out the way they're supposed to, what do? Well, I'm going to get loaded over it. Because I'm going to figure out some way to not feel that discomfort that I never wanted to feel before. And since nobody ever had me feel that, since I was never allowed to go through that, since I was always sheltered, since somebody was always picking up the pieces and making it right for me, now when somehow they don't, I'm going to drink or drug over it. I'm going to find some way to feel better than the way I feel about that, because that isn't too good. Entitlement means that I really think I am owed a lot of stuff or some stuff in my life. I become jealous of what other people have. She has this car, he has this nice apartment, they have this, they have this, they have this. I should have that. I should have that. It might be true that some of those people that I'm looking at were given stuff. Maybe they are sort of the, what do you want to call it, the silver spooners? Maybe they are. But in a lot of cases, you know what, if you go back and look at that person's life, they're not a silver spooner. They actually did the work to get there. They actually went through the stuff you got to do to get there. You go to work and you're like, man, I shouldn't have to do that. That job is beneath me. That job is beneath me. I should not have to do that job. Why not? Well, because I'm better than that. Well, what makes you better than that? Well, I don't know. I just am. Well, where does that come from? Well, I don't know. Well, it comes from this dilemma that we're talking about tonight. Amen? Entitlement is a piece of this. Another piece of this is what we're going to call insufficient self-control or insufficient self-discipline. I say what I say. I do what I do. I want what I want. And I'm top dog, I'm king. If you say something to me that I don't like, well, that's it for you. Because I get to say and I get to do whatever I want, however I want, any way I want, because I just get to. And if you get in my way, it's going to be a bad thing for you. And so here I am, and I know what the deal is. I know what the law is about assault, but you know what? I was pissed, so this is what I did. This happens, he did this, I did this. I showed him. It's like, no, actually though, you showed you. Because you're the one living with the consequence of that. And we can't figure out, how does it happen that I'm always in trouble with something? Why am I always on the outside of it? Why am I always struggling with this? Why is this always happening to me? What is going on that's causing all this? It just shouldn't happen to me. insufficient self-control, and self-discipline. Like look at this slide right here. That's what it really is. When I believe that I'm entitled to something, it puts me in a dependent relationship with somebody, doesn't it? Are you following that? When I believe that the world owes me something, somebody in the world, I am dependent on them. If mom oughta, if dad oughta, if grandma oughta, if grandpa oughta, if somebody oughta, it is creating a dependence on that individual, isn't it? Or on that system, or on whatever. If I've been at my job 16 years, let's say, and at my job, I've always come to work every day. I showed up. Good. And at my job, I was there like all 8 hours. Good. And since I've been there 16 years, I ought to get promoted. Because why? Do you ask yourself, beyond longevity and showing up and having a pulse, have I gone the extra mile in the organization that I work for? Have I worked harder than I needed to? Have I been there and done more than what was expected of me? Have I helped other people to succeed at their job? Have I improved the bottom line of the company? People go, you say that sometimes, people go, what are you talking about, dude? I go there for 8 hours. They should pay me more money every year. It's like, great, but have you improved the overall functioning, the bottom line of the company that you work for? Have you made, the thing about like sales, it's always a shocker to salespeople when you say, do you want to make more money? Yes, I do. It's like, I'm going to tell you how to do it. You ready? Here's how you do it. You make the company more money, and then they pay you more money. What? No. I go to work, and then they pay me more money. And I'm going to be resentful if they don't. That's our sickness. It starts all the way back. Man, it goes way back in the Bible. God isn't missing this one. He's not missing this one. Right away, entitlement 101, right? Right away out of the box, Adam and Eve, right away. God, you got everything you need right here. Eve, 20 seconds with the enemy. You want more? You want more? Remember, God just said, everything you need is in this garden. Are you hearing the brokenness in us? You want more? You betcha we want more. Well, here's all you got to do. Here's all you got to do. You just got to be like God. It's like, well, if you try to be like God, you try to play the role of God, that means you'll have God absent in your life by your choice, because you're taking that role, you're taking that seat. And you're going to be terrified the rest of your life as long as you're in the God seat. Amen? Part of entitlement, part of lack of self-control, part of lack of self-discipline is I put myself in an idolatrous life where I am in the God seat. I am in the God seat. I am my own higher power. That is a dangerous way to live. We're not up for the job is the deal. When we think we're our own higher power, in fact, we're impostoring that role. Something else is our higher power, something that is absolutely in every way in your life, in my life, self-destructive. God says simple stuff. God tells us simple stuff. He says, when you get married to people, you only have sex with them. In our entitlement, we go, I know, but that was back in the day. God doesn't really understand the way it is for us now. He's a little bit looser now. We're all right now. We're a little cooler about it now. It's like, really? God says when you get married, you do not have sex with anybody else. I have yet to meet a person that's come to my office that had sex outside of their marriage. And they say, Mark, I'm coming to your office because I want to tell you a story, man. What do you want to tell me? I want to tell you about this time I had sex outside of marriage with this other guy. I'm like, really? Tell me about that story. Okay, well, when I had sex with the guy, you know what? It actually improved my marriage. It was better. I told my husband he loved the idea. It was great. It created deeper trust in us. Everything was better. I've never heard that story. Don't come and tell it to me, all right? Because I know you're lying is the deal. What I know is that when we believe we're entitled to more, we're entitled to being married and also having sex with somebody else, it's a freaking train wreck. We really got to figure out how to live on God's terms. Let me just tell you, God's terms for you and God's terms for me are far healthier than mine for me are. I've learned that lesson over and over and over and over again. You're like, I don't believe in God. Okay, fake it then. It's okay. Eventually you will believe in God because God will show up and start loving on you. And then what are you going to do? Well, I don't really want you to be here. It's like, you're not going to tell God he doesn't get to stand beside you. He doesn't have much of a, he doesn't go, oh, sorry, sorry to be in your way. I've never seen God apologize for being where he wants to be. Amen? God will start to move on your life. You might not love him tonight. He totally loves you. But there's only one God seat. If you're in it, you got to vacate that sucker. You got to vacate that sucker tonight to get healthy. And if you're in the God seat, you know it, don't you? This stuff's all over the Bible. Here's another story of the Bible about what I'm talking about. It says a guy had 2 sons. The younger son told his father, I want my share of your, get the words here, I want my share of your stuff, your estate, now, before you die. I want my share of your stuff, Daddy, before you die. Because I want it. Because I ought to get it. Because you're the daddy, and you're supposed to do it. Or you're the mom, and you're supposed to do it. So the dad, in his wisdom, man, it's a truth. And the dad, in his wisdom, agreed to divide his wealth between his 2 sons. A few days later, this younger son, firmly in the God seat, that's not in the Bible. Like, was that in the Bible? No. Firmly in the God seat, with his freaking seatbelt on, packed all his belongings and moved to a distant land. And there he wasted all his money. Wait, now he thinks it's his money. There he wasted whose money? His daddy's money in wild living. About the time his money ran out, a great famine swept over the land. And so he began to starve. He could have been physically starving, he could have been emotionally starving, he could have been mentally starving, he could have been spiritually starving, but he was starving, amen? In recovery, in these rooms, this is known as what? Hitting a bottom. He persuaded a local farmer to hire him, and the man sent him into his fields to feed the pigs. The young man became so hungry that even the pods he was feeding the pigs looked good to him, but no one gave him anything. He has now hit his consequence. He has now hit his consequence. It's like people tell me stories. Man, I mean, like, you got a sour look on your face. What happened to you? Well, I mean, I didn't have a good weekend. What happened to you this weekend? Well, I mean, I got a DUI. Really? I mean, should you have got a DUI? I mean, were you messed up? Well, yeah, I was pretty messed up, but I mean, the thing was, the guy stopped me. It was a weird time. I don't even know why he stopped me. I wasn't really doing anything wrong, and I don't know. He just was picking on me. Why was he picking on you? I don't know. I had a red car. Oh, so he's picking on red? Yeah, he had a thing for red cars. Oh, so he pulled you over because you had a red car? I think so. It had nothing to do with your driving. Nope, nothing whatsoever. Random. I'm like, I know. So then he made me have a breathalyzer. What'd you blow? I blew a 1.2. Oh, well, let me ask you a question. Do you think you, based on the law, whether you like the law or not? Of course, now, if I'm entitled, I don't like the freaking law. It's a stupid law. It ought to be a 3.0 is where you ought to go. But yeah, I mean, he pulled me, and so like I blew a 1 point something. He said I was drunk. Well, were you? No. He shouldn't have done it. I mean, it wasn't my fault, really. All I was doing... Someone else said this to me. It really wasn't my fault. All I was doing was driving home. I'm like, oh my God. I was just driving home. It wasn't right. No one gave him anything. It wasn't right. But what happens to this kid? When he finally came to his senses, he said to himself, at home, even the hired servants have food enough to spare. And here I am, dying of hunger. I'll go home to my dad and say, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you. I'll go home to my dad and I will take responsibility for what is mine. Now, if you're codependent, I mean, this isn't your problem because you'll take responsibility for everything, right? I mean, everything's... But I will take responsibility for what is mine. I've sinned against both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy of being called your son. Take me on as a hired servant. This is out of Luke 15. There's more to the story we're going to get to in a minute, but look at this next picture. If it's true that entitlement creates dependence, it is also true that empowerment, me believing that I'm responsible for myself, me believing that I'm responsible for my own decisions, me believing that I'm responsible for what I do with my life and how I do it, me taking responsibility for that, when do I, like we said last week, when does it become my responsibility what's happening in my life? When I become aware of it. When I become aware of it. I grew up with an alcoholic mom, or I grew up with an alcoholic dad, or I grew up and I was abused or molested. And man, I grieve that for you. I grieve that for you. I want to legitimize that for you. But I want to say, Jesus didn't die on a cross for you to sit and continue day after day to be victimized by the exact same event. It really can become your history that you can learn to live with and live beyond. Amen? It really can be that. But we got to learn that empowerment equals us being free. We got to learn what that's like. Empowerment equals independence. I can. I will. I am going to take this step, this step, this step in order to move life forward. And the first piece of it is, I can take responsibility for my part of what is going on here. Now, I'm not asking us to take responsibility for more than that, but isn't it true for us to get healthy, we eventually got to sit down in front of God. We got to go, first of all, I'm vacating the God seat. Second of all, you're back in the God seat where you really always were. I was just lying to myself. Third thing you do is you go, God, I really want to talk to you about what's going on in my life. I want to get in front of you and talk to you. I know you love me. I know you're not going to leave me. I know you died for me. I know there's nothing I can say to you to make you go, man, I'm done. I know that. And so now I want to talk to you about what's really going on with me, God. I want to get down to it with you. I want to share some truth with you. Because I know that when I start to do that, you're going to begin to release me from me. But man, I gotta get out of that God seat. That's part of our entitlement, is believing that we belong there. No, we don't. When someone says to us, just think about the way you gauge. Someone goes, you know what, Mark? I mean, you're not God. And you go, you say because you know you have to, right? Well, I know I'm not God. But in your gut, you're like, but I really kind of want to be God. That puts me back in the God seat. Man, there's no health in the God seat. There's no freedom in the God seat. There's no peace in the God seat. There's no legitimate perspective in the God seat. We got to vacate that seat. We got to realize that what we're responsible for and what we're not responsible for. We got to tell the truth in front of God. We really do. We got to tell the truth in front of God. You know, in the end, I mean, doing a fourth step, when you get there, I mean, it might be terrifying to do a fourth step in front of somebody else, but I'm telling you, man, it doesn't matter who else hears it. You just really eventually got to end up with God, don't you? And God's going to bring it, man. He's going to bring the love. He's going to bring the truth. He's going to bring the conviction. But mostly, when you can get that far, God's going to bring the healing. God's going to bring the healing. The way out of this dilemma we're talking about tonight, man, is to let God be God. Amen? And to let God love you. The other part of this story is that the dad in this story, man, he got it all right. He said, come on home, son. Come on home. We can heal this together. We can talk about this together. I can set you free. And he fed him. Tonight we're going to celebrate the Lord's Supper. And we're doing that because this is the right place for Jesus to come and feed us when we're the most hungry. When we're the most hungry, when we're the most afraid, when we're the most vulnerable, realizing that, you know what? We're not in the God seat. And so tonight Jesus comes to us the way he came to his disciples that first night. He shared this meal. And he breaks bread with us. Says, take and eat. This is my body given for you. When you eat from this bread, you will never be hungry again. Tonight Jesus takes this cup and he lifts it up to us and he says, take and drink. This is the new cup of the new covenant, the new promise shed for you and for all people for the forgiveness of sins and for life. And when you drink from this cup, you will never be thirsty again. The question always is, well, what do I got to do to be ready to receive this meal? You know what you got to do? You just got to be hungry for Jesus. That's it. You just got to be hungry for Jesus. We're going to celebrate this meal together. You can pray after you receive it. Whatever you need to do to be closer to Jesus, do that. In his sweet name, amen.